Today's webinar on ensuring that public servants have the cybersecurity skills they need. I'm Mia Hunt from Global Government Forum, the publishing, events and research business for civil and public servants around the world. I'll be sharing the webinar today, so I'm going to give you a brief summary of what we'll be covering during the session before introducing you to our panellists. As more and more government services move online, the need for high-quality cybersecurity skills becomes ever more pressing for departments and organisations. This means that governments need to both recruit people with the skills needed to boost the cybersecurity of crucial national systems and to ensure that existing staff have the skills and understanding required to keep government data secure. In this webinar, we'll look at how governments can boost cybersecurity across departments and agencies, considering what techniques governments can use to make sure they are eliminating as many threats as possible. So it'll be a really interesting discussion, I'm sure, and we have a brilliant international panel today who will share their expertise. We're going to start with short presentations from each of our four panellists, who I'll introduce you to in a moment. We will then move on to questions from you, the audience. So please do ask any questions that come to mind at any time during the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll get through as many of those as we can. Now to the panel. We have with us today Ian McCormack, Deputy Director for Government Cyber Resilience at the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. Ian is responsible for overseeing the security advice and assistance provided to improve the cyber resilience of the UK public sector, including HM government, defence, health, local government and the devolved administrations of the UK. Ian is responsible for the Defending Democracy programme, which includes cyber defence of the UK democratic process and personal cybersecurity for VIPs. Ian has worked in the cybersecurity domain for over 20 years, with a particular focus on development of risk management and security practices that support the adoption of modern technologies. He has been instrumental in changing how government approaches and uses technology, reforming approaches to security and advising on some of the most significant national programmes. Also joining us is Matej Shelmik, Director of the Training, Awareness, Cooperation and Support Centre, National Cybersecurity Centre, Slovak Republic. Working at National Cybersecurity Centre under the National Security Authority, Matt is responsible for a range of activities, including legislation, developing support, awareness raising, education, process development and national and international cooperation. His team deals with all aspects of cybersecurity, from governments to operations. Matt focuses primarily on strategic thinking and the preparation of strategic documents, consultations on cyber issues with partners, training organisations, and the optimisation of processes. He also works on risk management at the sectoral and national level. We have with us Bernardo Palazzi, Advisor, Skill and Competence Development at Italy's National Cybersecurity Agency. Bernardo serves as advisor for capacity and competence development at the Italian National Cybersecurity Agency. He is currently on leave from the National Institute of Statistics, ISTAT, where he holds the position of senior technologist and was previously data protection officer. He organised security measures for the first online general population census. His research interests encompass computer and network security, privacy tools, cloud security, and security visualization techniques, and he collaborates with Brown University in Rhode Island, USA, where his roles include adjunct professor at the Department of Computer Science. He holds an international patent related to database security and founded and served as Chief Technology Officer of a cloud data security startup. And completing today's panel is Lauren Bose-Hayes from the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, who has stepped in last minute for her colleague Eric Goldstein, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us. So thank you so much, Lauren, for joining at such short notice. Lauren is a Senior Advisor for Technology and Innovation at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. She's a founding fellow of the Integrity Institute and an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Lauren is a leader at the intersection of technology, security, and social issues. Prior to her present roles, Lauren led cybersecurity for the Biden-Harris transition team, led Meta's 2020 US election counter-espionage analysis, pioneered domestic disinformation investigations at Meta, and co-founded Deloitte's threat intelligence and analytics practice. So we'll go to our panelists for their opening thoughts now. And Ian, we'll start with you, please.
Fantastic, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, it's amazing to be joining such an amazing panel, actually. Some brilliant people there, so thank you for having me. I'm going to start actually with just a few reflections on the cyber threat, if I may, as I think this is really important context for the conversation that we're going to have this afternoon. So when we tend to think about the cyber threat, we typically will talk about state threats, non-state threats, former, principally being Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and the latter typically being cybercrime, which is usually motivated by profit. And that's a bit of a crude characterization, and there's clearly a blurry boundary between them. But that's how we look at them. And sometimes I find it might perhaps be a little bit easy to fixate on the threat from nation states, but my judgment would be that often the greatest harm that's been caused to organizations typically remains cybercrime, and in particular ransomware. Over the last year at NCSC, we've continued to handle a number of really high impact ransomware incidents across a number of sectors in the UK. The true number of incidents will be much higher than those that we've handled. We don't hear about them all. We only directly get involved with the most significant ones. So a really, really significant threat. And the whole ecosystem that sits around ransomware has continued to evolve. It's become incredibly sophisticated. We're seeing a lot more now ransomware offered as a service on an affiliate basis. We see the use of initial access brokers and a really professional, extensive infrastructure, including operations that would resemble the operations you'd find in actually a complex business operation. I'm sure sort of everybody here is aware of the rise of double extortion as well with ransomware. By that I mean the denying access to data, but also the threat that the adversary will leak that data if the ransom's not paid. And that's become quite routine. But what we started to see more lately is leak-only extortion. And basically, I think what's going on there is criminal groups are using whatever techniques are most likely to put pressure on an organization towards payment. And then we consider states. There's an increasingly unstable geopolitical situation, and that's playing out, right now in a number of different places, and that affects how we need to consider our cyber resilience. And this is from conflict in Ukraine, tensions in the South China Sea, and now, of course, the terrible situation that's ongoing in the Middle East. And we need to both ensure that the most critical things of our nations, our critical infrastructure, the services we rely on, are resilient to those emergent threats, but also that across the board we're resilient to the potential, if you like, for spillover of some of the cyber incidents happening, such as occurred a number of years ago with NotPetya, you may remember, still considered one of the most damaging attacks. And it's entirely possible with how we're seeing some of the, for example, the Russian deployed wiper malware against Ukrainian targets could potentially spill over. So that's something that I think we all need to be concerned about. And then, of course, there's the potential for the broader proliferation of advanced cyber tools to a broader variety of organizations, be that states or high-end groups. And that really has the potential to expand that list of the most concerning states, those four that I mentioned, from a cyber perspective, quite markedly. So in terms of where we're seeing attacks, I'll just pull out two key trends that I'm seeing. The first is in the supply chain. And I'd probably go as far to say that most of the significant attacks that I've seen recently have had a really major supply chain component to them. And if you look at some of the really big incidents of late, there were SolarWinds, which affected everybody that used the product, even if the sort of the latter stages of attack was a bit more limited. That was attributed to Russia. There was a Microsoft Exchange Server attack in 2021. That was attributed to Chinese actors. And there was the recent attack against Microsoft 365 email, which Microsoft themselves has described as being related to a Chinese hacked group, Storm 558. But there's even more ransomware supply chain incidents as well. In the UK, just a couple that affected organizations really badly was the incident that affected a company called Advanced that was a really important supplier to NHS services. There was Capita, a major MSP that was impacted. The point here being that cyber attacks against third-party organizations can have a massive impact on you and your organization. And that can be really difficult to manage because a lot of the levers may be outside of your control. The second trend I just want to briefly mention is the targeting of individuals, often targeting of individuals within the personal domain, their personal life, personal services. We issued an advisory last year about Russian and Iranian spearfish targeting of individuals, and there's lots of examples in this space as well. And most of those, they seek to target personal online service use, such as personal email, and they use relatively unsophisticated methods, such as targeting perhaps weak authentication practices, but that's coupled with really good social engineering. So that's kind of what we're seeing in skills. But I want to bring this, sorry, in terms of threat, but I want to bring it back, very briefly to skills, and an understanding and responsibility for cybersecurity. And I think long gone are the days when organisations could build a cyber team, and that cyber team would be solely responsible for an organisation's cybersecurity. And I'd like to use that sort of threat evolution to illustrate that. So imagine you're an organisation and you've been impacted by a major ransomware incident in your supply chain, one of your key suppliers. And incidentally, I think that's probably one of the most likely scenarios that might play out, actually. In your operational response, your cyber team are probably unlikely to be able to have much direct ability to respond to that. You're reliant upon the response, the diligence of your suppliers to identify that attack, to quickly take action to minimize impact, to engage a competent incident response partner, ensure the actor's removed, identify root cause, manage comms, and a whole lot more. And how you respond, and importantly, who responds requires a whole business, effort, from operations, definitely your comms team, probably your legal team, and most definitely your board members. So all of those people absolutely need to be cyber literate. They need to understand how cyber will affect their responsibilities in that kind of a scenario, and be prepared for it, because the very last thing you want to be able to do, having to do, is trying to upskill your board members on cybersecurity in the middle of a fast-paced incident like that. But that's just the operational response element. Of course, preemptive defensive cyber is just as important as well. So how do you embed some of that into your supply chain? I mean, here procurement professionals are really critical, and it's perhaps not quite so simple as model contract clauses for security, even though that's hard in its own right. What about the consumption of commodity technologies, where you need to evaluate a standard offer and understand the security dimension to it, and whether that's appropriate? And the challenge there also becomes amplified if you start thinking about the software supply chain. It becomes infinitely harder again. And if you're procuring a designing capability, perhaps the need for that to be designed secure by design, is especially important. So that means that engineers and product leads really need to understand and be able to execute their responsibility for baking in cybersecurity right at the outset. And then I mentioned, sort of under the threat part as well, the threat will go after information wherever they find it, including within people's personal domains. So upskilling, especially your executives, has to include their personal life as well. But this becomes really difficult to manage, because we need to equip people to make good decisions about technology services they use, and how do they make those securely as reasonably possible, but balanced with the fact that these are consumer-based services often. So what I'm really sort of doing here is painting a picture that cyber skills isn't just about cyber people. It needs this whole of ecosystem approach that spans right across your organization, from the executive through to specialists in all sorts of different domains. And hopefully I've illustrated sort of some of that by reference to the threat a little bit and some of the instances we see. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that. It's really great to open with the sort of current context around cybersecurity and how ransomware is evolving, threats from state actors at a time when geopolitical tension is high, the targeting of individuals, and a response needing to be a sort of whole ecosystem one, as well as touching on procurement there as well. So that's great. Thank you very much. Matt, we'll come on to you now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon or morning or evening, it depends where you are. Thanks, Ian, for great points in your briefly presentation. I try to start with quoting on our national cybersecurity strategy. Only one point in our strategy is strategic goal of a well-educated professionals and well-educated public, and this strategy goal starts with this sentence: in the field of cybersecurity, education is one of the main areas allowing development and improvement of capabilities in comprehensive activities of the cybersecurity system. And in the public sector, this goes double. That means we need well-educated professionals in public sector. Public servants have great responsibility and accountability in providing crucial or critical services to citizens. That means they have to be aware on cybersecurity threats and new informations in this topic so much. In Slovakia, the system is really good setup because in our legislation, we have adopted European cyber security framework that determined roles, key knowledge, skills, and competencies for each role in cybersecurity. And this framework shall be obliged for operators of essential services for regulated subjects by law by 1st of January 2024. That is great shift in this area, but this is a good thing. We have rules, we have frameworks, we have standards, but one non-good things is we do not have practice in implementation. That means subjects defines this like only like a obligation by the law, only like a complete compliance evil, but we need to shift from this to more passion and interest, not by the management only, but from public servants, the ordinary public servants itself. Ian mentioned one great thing, security by design. I have to say we need security awareness by design. That means we need speak more human. We need to provide more programs for public servants, for general public, more interesting, more funny, because people need to understand that cybersecurity is not only crucial or important thing, it's strategical thing in security of every citizen of whole society. And that's my points. I've been not very, I've been very quick, but that's my points. And thank you very much. And I'm looking forward for further discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So yeah, great to hear about Cyber Republic's strategic goal in cybersecurity and cybersecurity skills, the importance of public servants being aware of new threats, of driving interest across the organisation at all levels, and also communicating with officials and with the public in an engaging way on these issues. So thanks again. Bernardo, coming to you, please.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for this invitation and thanks for this great panel on a very important topic. So I work for the Italian Cybersecurity Agency, and so I like to do presentation. I work in the university, so we like to do slides. So that's the reason because I put some slides. Okay, so if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so our agency, so in Italy, it is quite new. We started in September 2021, and probably we are the most recent in Europe, and for different reasons, but we started late in Italy. So we try to learn from the other agency to improve our approach to cybersecurity. And so essentially this kind of, so this essentially will coordinate the different part of cybersecurity, and in particular the resilience. I will talk more in the next slide. By the way, we prepared the National Cybersecurity Strategy. This is a huge document. I will talk a little bit more in a future slides. And then also what is important, we have some measures in the National Cybersecurity Strategy, but we want to raise the cybersecurity awareness, and also the education training thing is some very important in our strategy. and also with some university programs on this subject. So essentially, our goal is trying to prevent. Often in cybersecurity, we have a reactive approach to the attacks. So our approach is to raise the awareness and the knowledge of cybersecurity to try to be proactive and to avoid some of the attacks to our community. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is essentially the organization. We have the National Cybersecurity Strategy. It is a law in Italy, and we have 4 different roles among different organizations. And essentially, we have the first one. It is my organization in which we have cybersecurity and resilience. So the main task of my agency it is to help the organization to resolve an attack. So in the way that we want to make work again the system. So that's the meaning of resiliency. And essentially, this is the main task. So we want to help the organization if they receive an attack to go back. Not just this goal for my organization, but this is probably the main goal. Also, we have a different organization in Italy, and that's the reason because we didn't have an agency until 2 years ago, because essentially before we have essentially all the police sector for the cybercrime, and we have a different police. One particular is the communication police that they are in charge of the cybercrime. We have also the military part for the defense and the security of the state, and essentially together with the intelligence in which we do threat analysis and also all the information about hacking and the offensive part of cybersecurity. Also, we coordinate and we collaborate at the national and international level with different organizations, including the NATO, the UN, and the European Union. Next slide. Okay, so the idea of my agency, of the Italian agency, is to be a catalyst, to have a catalyst role. So essentially, we have different parts. So the civil society, the private sector, academia, and research and public sector, and we want to help to speed up the process of raising cybersecurity knowledge among these different areas. If you can press again. Okay, so essentially we have different parts like the awareness, the response to a crisis, not hackback, but just how to deal with an incident. The technology part is also very important. I think almost half of the employees, they have a technology background. And most of all, the education probably is the main sector that, at least in my group, we are trying to raise. Next slide. Okay, so the organization, just to give you an idea, we have the Director General that is in charge, and they report directly to the Prime Minister, and also the different departments. What is interesting, it is that we have also in charge of the certification of the different products and the security of the system, and also we have to manage, for instance, inside the operation, the computer emergency response team for the nation. Also, we have some part for research because it is important, and that's what we learn from different agencies around the world, together with industrial and technology partnership for private and public. Also, we have the part on authority and sanctions, and also we have mission unit, strategic international relations for the cooperation and the skill and competence development. This is where I am. So this is a part in which we are trying to coordinate the university and the higher education to raise the knowledge of cybersecurity. We are almost 300 at this time, and in the next few months we should reach 300. So quite small still, but we are growing pretty fast. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the National Cybersecurity Strategy. It is not just a strategy, but also we have 82 specific objectives. Just to give you an idea of the importance of the education, we have 14 different objectives just in the education and the awareness. So it is a large part of our strategy. It is about the rise of awareness and education. Also with different administration that that are responsible for implementing this task. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so essentially this is our strategy. We have 3 different pillars. So the protection, in which we have all the different parts about the technological part, but also, for instance, the cyber resilience of public administration, the national infrastructure. So we are trying to build infrastructure to be a sort of a shield for the nation. And then the response in a way that is the management and the incident handling, and also some cybersecurity exercise for the country. And then the development, in which we have different part of role, like, for instance, also the awareness campaign for the country and the coordination center for the university. And together we have some enablers, that is the international cooperation and also the training awareness, that they are shared among all the different areas. So essentially this is the idea of our strategy. Okay, I think next slide. This is the last one. So I would like to thanks for the attention and share for the question, not just in the next part of the panel. You can reach me at this email. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Bernardo. So yes, thank you there for that overview of this, what is a relatively new agency mission to be more proactive in identifying and heading off threats rather than reactive, and to raise cybersecurity awareness across sectors and look at the national strategy too. I can see we have one question in already, but just a reminder to everyone watching that you can ask a question at any time by typing into the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. So please do that. We're going to go to Lauren now for her presentation, and then on to the question and answer section of this webinar. Lauren, thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for the kind intro, Mia, and wonderful to be here today. First and foremost, and I would really love to thank our partners here today from the United Kingdom, the Slovak Republic, and from Italy. It's wonderful to see individuals who we're partnering with on so much incredible work, and the exceptional and unique ties between all of our nations and the United States are no more evident and necessary than in our joint commitment to fight against what is one of just the greatest threats to our global community, malicious cyber activity. And continuing to deepen the ties between Europe and the United States as we collectively address the digital threats facing the global community has been just a top priority of ours and a priority for my agency. So I know that everyone here today can agree the stakes in the decade ahead could just not be any higher for not only those of us in the technology and cybersecurity fields, but for those of us in government, across industry, academia, and critical infrastructure. The past few years have just brought this reality into sharp relief. Because the balance of power in global governance and even the future of global economic competitiveness will all be significantly shaped by what we do today and by the changes that we make in how we approach cybersecurity. So today's decisions on investment and prioritization of cybersecurity will lay the foundation for the future of our organizations, our communities, our nations, and our global ecosystem. These decisions also come in the face of an extremely complex and evolving threat environment. As Ian spoke to earlier in his opening remarks, we know that our most critical infrastructure continues to be a significant target of interest by a diverse group of threat actors who today, through cyberspace, can initiate intrusions from really anywhere in the world. And given this evolving environment, we need to reach across traditional boundaries by deepening the ties across sectors, across borders, and we're going to be able to unify our collective defense and foster a cyber ecosystem that gives the advantage back to the network defenders only through these types of partnerships. For the United States, That's where our agency CISA comes in as the US's cyber defense agency and the national coordinator for critical infrastructure resiliency and security. CISA leads the effort to understand, manage, and reduce risk to the cyber and physical infrastructure that Americans rely on every hour of every day. So these essential services include the water we drink, generating the electricity that lights our homes, providing the gas we get at the fuel pumps, and all of the critical functions that keep our society running, and really those functions that make our nation who we are and what we are proud to be in the world. I also want to highlight that in the United States, the majority of these services are owned and operated by the private sector. So gaining visibility and taking action against the threats facing our critical infrastructure requires just daily collaboration with our partners in industry, in the intelligence community, and in law enforcement. And that's really why partnership is central to how CISA operates and how we think about the cybersecurity community. We also recognize that despite our best efforts, incidents, they will happen. So we have to work with our partners to minimize the extent of the damage. Ensuring critical infrastructure resilience is not merely about absorbing the damage of an incident, it's also about quickly recovering from one and mitigating the consequences of that intrusion. So when CISA responds to or learns about an incident, we take the information we learn, we share it with others so that they can protect themselves.
I think Lauren may be having some technical issues there, so I'll just give her a few more seconds and see if she comes back.
Continue to be just a tremendous partner in these efforts, and CISA is looking to grow our ongoing collaboration with the global community. But
Lauren, we lost you for a bit there, but you are now back. So I think we may have missed a short section there. Apologies. I think you were talking about mitigating risks.
Gotcha. I didn't get any notification about my network having an issue, so apologies. Yeah, just jump in really to say that, our international partners are just a tremendous part of the efforts that we have at CISA to make sure we grow our ongoing collaboration with the global community. And at the end of the day, CISA strives to enable really practical cybersecurity outcomes. And while over the past few years, I'm sure everyone can agree that it's felt like we've just been sort of putting out fire after fire after fire, we also know that we need to address the long-term risks. And if we're always just putting out today's fires, then we're never going to be able to get ahead of them. And so at CISA, a lot of what that means to sort of try to both deal with the realities of the pressing incidents of today while also trying to work towards this more cyber resilient technology ecosystem globally moving forward is balancing a number of different priorities simultaneously. So one of the pillars is that technology needs to become secure and trusted by design. A second element of our strategic focus on this long-term cyber resilience is to work towards accountability by CEOs and board directors as cybersecurity moves beyond what we've traditionally thought of as like an information technology or an IT issue to really a new era of corporate cyber responsibility that's seen as a central imperative for all businesses. We are working to encourage radical transparency in our IT software and products, since we know that the more we understand those products, the more we can ensure they are secure by design and default. We need to focus on greater investment in raising public awareness of threats and online security choices, as has been highlighted by the two panelists prior. And finally, we know that we need a cultural shift that promotes deep and unfettered collaboration between companies and government to ensure we collectively move faster than our adversaries. We know that public-private partnerships have been a term in use for decades at this point. And what we really are seeking to understand is how do we make that practical, real, and accessible such that we really feel like we're operating from one team. So I know that these are issues our partners in Europe are also looking at, and really look forward to the panel and the upcoming questions as well as the Q&A, and looking to sharing more notes as we go about sort of the threats we see and the ways in which we're thinking about tackling these challenges together.
Thank you so much. So great there to highlight how the decisions and actions made today will have a big impact on the future. The importance of partnerships and collaborations internationally, critical infrastructure, CISA's remit, security by design, and raising public awareness as well. So thank you so much to our panelists for those opening comments. We will go to questions now. So we have a couple of it coming in from the audience. A couple of you, I think, spoke about, well, actually, Bernardo, I'm thinking back to your presentation. You mentioned that the agency is fairly new. I think you said 2021. It was established, and that you were learning from other agencies. I don't know whether you meant nationally, internally, or whether you were talking about internationally as well. But one of the questions that's come in is whether your countries are learning from each other, indeed from other countries, both in terms of the emerging risks and new threats, and in terms of skills and training best practice for officials and civil and public servants. Ian, we haven't heard from you for a while, so I'll come to you first, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, so regarding the collaboration of the first question, yes, so essentially in Europe, in the European Union, we have the ENISA, that is the European Agency for Cybersecurity, that essentially coordinates most of the information among the different member states. So a few days ago, I was in Bratislava to talk about cybersecurity skills and competence among the European Union. Also, we are working together to improve the European cybersecurity skills framework that Mette Sharmek was talking. So essentially, we are trying to find some roles, and also we will have next month some bilateral meetings with the US, with the CISA, and with NSA. So essentially, we are working, because essentially the attackers usually they don't take a lot care of the borders. So that's the reason, because we have to collaborate all together to understand which kind of technology. Another problem it is that usually we use the same technology among most of the different countries, in particularly for the final users or for the public servants. So Windows system, it is, I think, the most common operating system all around the world. And so in this case, if there is a threat to this kind of operating system, it is pretty easy to exploit this threat. And that's the reason, because we need to learn, but also, for instance, our computer emergency response team learn from the common vulnerability exposure that is run by MITRE and by NIST in the States, also the National Vulnerability Database. So essentially, there is a huge cooperation among states in a different part of the cybersecurity, also because I said it is pretty easy on internet to reach different states. I hope this answered the question.
Sure, thanks for that. Ian, we'll come to you, please.
Brilliant, thank you. So some great remarks there. Yeah, I mean, collaboration across the partners we have in this call and more broadly is actually is an incredibly important part of our approach to how we build awareness, how we build resilience, how we respond together as a community. And I would very much observe that we have much greater impact when we act together. We are much more influential, particularly influential where we're trying to shape globalized commodity technology vendors. We're much more influential in raising awareness and also in establishing and promoting our values and our norms across this domain as well, which is in contrast to the values that are held by some of our adversaries. So I think that that can be done at much greater impact when we act together. And there's some really good initiatives that's going on at the moment. We publish a number of, and I'd like there to be a lot more actually, but we publish a number of advisories, particularly with our friends at CISA and other nations as well. And whenever we do that, the impact that we have is just magnified hugely because of the joint shared reach that we've got. So those kind of initiatives are incredibly important to us. And then also, we work on things together. We work on projects and programs together. Be that sort of defence programs or something else. And where we've got shared equity, we've got shared interests. We need to approach that in a consistent way. And we've spoken a little bit about secure by design across a few of the introductory remarks. We need to be consistent in what we're asking for in terms of our vendors to be secure by design, so that they hear that direction from all of us consistently. Again, it has greater impact. So it is a I think it's a really, really important part of what we do. And as I say, we can be so much more influential and powerful when we act together. Much more than the sum of the parts, I think.
Thank you for your answer there. Matt, would you like to answer that same question as well?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's not a silo situation. I mean, the best example of cooperation is European Union, because within European Union we have a lot of initiatives, projects, and formats to share and work together, not only on operational or technical level, but on strategical level, and as well in awareness raising. It's October, it's a cybersecurity month, and the European Cybersecurity Agency, ENISA, will provide materials, videos, infographics for every European countries in their languages. That it's a great addition, and it's a great example of quite good cooperation. But we have a lot of initiatives around the world, like counter-ransomware initiatives, working groups within OSCE. We have professional organizations like Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, Trusted Introducer, etc., where the frameworks and standards has been developed, like common vulnerability scoring system or traffic light protocol. That means security is not a topic for one organization or one person or one country. It's a worldwide, not a problem, not an issue. It's a worldwide topic. We need to handle together and share information, share knowledge and know-how to be better and better.
Sure, thank you. And Lauren, so the question there, just to repeat, on collaborating with other countries on the kind of emerging threats, and also on cybersecurity training best practice for civil and public servants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to just echo what Ian led with, of course, we really are focused on when we put out a major report. For us, a lot of what makes that and sort of reflects the fact that for us it's a major report is that we are working with our partners to make sure that we are jointly producing that, jointly confirming some sort of assessment that we're putting forward, and making sure that we are then amplifying those materials around the world. And so really doing our work in lockstep with partners, really, we know drives additional benefit both in our country, but around the world. And so multiple different areas in which this is the case. I know for us at CISA, I know we have some questions today about also what we're doing to support sort of the full breadth of organizations, from those that are the most mature enterprises who are at risk of the most sophisticated attacks, as well as smaller organizations who may not be as well resourced to defend themselves, all the way to individuals and what the individual can do. And I know that at CISA, this is something where we've really learned a lot from our international peer organizations, because at CISA, we often originally would start our materials with an approach of thinking that we are speaking to, a sophisticated enterprise. And we have been really shifting over the past few years that mindset to be one that's really focused on speaking to every organization and every type of organization across our country. I know that It is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, of course, which is always an important opportunity to really promote digital safety and really have that be a collaborative educational effort across government and industry and with partners around the world. And for us at CISA, our theme of Cybersecurity Awareness Month for this year is Secure Our World. And so throughout October, we're really highlighting different ways that individuals and organizations can improve their cybersecurity habits. And again, this is a campaign that really takes that approach of thinking through what does it do, what does it look like to provide valuable resources, training, et cetera, to folks so that they can secure their families and make sure that at the individual and the personal level, people feel safe online. And then so that organizations can secure our businesses by ensuring, that there's software and products that are being used have the latest security updates. And then all the way up through talking to tech manufacturers about securing our products that we're all reliant on. And so this is one way in which we're trying to make sure that the training and guidance and materials that we are putting forward really speak to all elements of society, and that we're doing that in lockstep with our partners.
Thanks very much. So thank you to the member of the audience who asked that question. I think you've got a really good answer there from all of our panelists. I'll ask one of my questions now, and it links into another question from the audience, so I'll get onto that afterwards. I wanted to ask how you gauge cybersecurity skills and capabilities among staff, both in individual government departments and agencies and across government, so that you can start to build a strategy for filling the gaps. How do you go about assessing and monitoring that? Is there someone who would like to go first on answering that one? Matt, can I come to you?
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Good question. Yes, as I said on the beginning, we have framework standards, strategies, rules, all that stuff, but the real, operation of these things are quite not that good, diplomatically said. In Slovakia, we have a national cybersecurity strategy and action plan to implement cybersecurity strategy. And this action plan, there is 155 tasks for multiple stakeholders, from Ministry of Interior through Ministry of Finance to Ministry of Education and so many stakeholders. And especially in education, there is a 55th tasks. And we try to manage this through monitoring committee, which monitor and coordinate of fulfilling of these tasks. Unfortunately, this action plan and national strategy is non-legislative document. That means, it's not a rule. It's only a recommendation or strategical thing, and some subjects, some stakeholders are not really good aware about importance of fulfilling of these tasks. As I said, you have rules, you have strategies, you have all that stuff, but you need engaged people, individuals, not the organizations, because passionate and driving individuals can provide a lot of work in this topic, but if you do not have such individuals, you can have everything on the paper, but the real work can't be done because, and that's it. it's a case in Slovakia. I don't have information about other countries, but I see the gap between, for example, Czech Republic and Slovakia, or Germany and Slovakia, or UK and Slovakia in this topic, and we try to work on that, but it's a long-term goal to maintain or mitigate this long-term risk, and that's it.
Thank you, Matt. Lauren, oh, sorry, Ian.
No, go ahead if you're going to come in, Lauren.
Yeah, happy to jump in. So, yeah, of course, people make the culture of an organization. And so ensuring that you have a security culture really starts with making sure your employees, your colleagues are being trained and really bought into the idea that they are an important player in the cybersecurity of your organization. That's just foundational, absolutely. But we also really do believe that that security culture can and should really be signaled from the top. And that's one of the reasons why we've put this focus on executives and boards, because often in practice, we've had this dynamic over the past many years of really this focus on the end user as sort of the person who could introduce risk to an organization. We want to get to a world where the way that we're actually architecting, right, our technology ecosystems actually reduces the risk that any particular individual can introduce to that organization. And so that's really in alignment with like zero trust principles, right? And things like this, where instead of putting all of that really grave pressure on an individual not to click on that phishing link, right? Instead, we're actually saying, hey, we're going to put that responsibility on our technology leaders to architect an environment in which if you click on that phishing link, our entire organization does not sort of crumble below us, right? And now that's really challenging, but I say that to say we do need to focus on training. We do need to focus on creating a culture of security. However, a lot of times it's the executives in an organization being fully bought into a security culture who can really drive the types of investments at scale in an organization that can lead to implementation of things like zero trust, which actually lead to a world where we have a better balance of where that risk is sitting and how sort of critical the end user whose job is not cybersecurity in their day-to-day function is to that organization's risk posture. And so I think it really cuts across, yes, of course, there can be metrics associated with providing trainings to employees and making sure employees are doing things like enrolling in multi-factor authentication and all of the basic security controls that we know contribute so significantly to the security posture of an organization. But we also think that there's really that need to shift a lot of the focus towards those who are in the positions of power to drive a true and deep security culture across an organization.
Thank you. And that links really nicely with one of the questions we've had come in. This one's from Don Costello, who asks what approaches to educating and awareness for boards and executives have you found most effective? So Ian, I know you wanted to come in on that last one on sort of more generally gauging skills and capabilities, but I didn't know whether you wanted to also answer that question about board members and executives.
Yeah, I'd be really happy to, and it's great actually sort of like coming after those comments from Lauren, because I couldn't agree more in those remarks about supporting your users. And I'm very much an advocate of your users are your strongest link. They're certainly not your weakest link. Your users are smart, diligent people trying to do a good job in a very difficult environment. And actually they're an amazing anomaly detection network as well. So if you position this right, your users are your strongest link, and it is therefore beholden upon the those with responsibility for developing capability and providing technology solutions, a secure by design type like philosophy, to ensure that the needs of those users are being met. I mean, just in terms of sort of building skills generally, and then I come onto the board sort of relation question. I mean, the first thing about skills, as I was setting out in my introductory remarks, there's not one cyber role. There are many cyber roles, and I think that's the first thing that we need to understand and recognize, and we need to support the development of people through those different roles. And some of those won't be traditionally cyber related. So how do you, for example, you build skills and support people to understand cybersecurity that are in, say, procurement roles, which is absolutely critical for getting cybersecurity right. So there's that. I do see a bit of like a consistency across how we define roles, and really, really interesting actually, listening to Mate's remarks there about the approach that the Slovak Republic have taken. That's super interesting. In the UK, we relatively recently we have the establishment of the UK Cybersecurity Council, which is trying to make a bit more sense of that landscape as well for us. So hopefully that will bring benefit. One thing that I would advise board members on in terms of building skills is, I think we need to recognise that building skills, building capability takes time. I often see a real sense of impatience. We've got a skills problem right now. What can I do to bring the skills in or build the skills I need? And I want it done in 3 months' time. Particularly in the public sector, where it can be sometimes quite difficult, sort of in terms of, like the financial situation that we've got available, to bring in good, experienced cybersecurity professionals, because the cost of that is really high. I think we do need to take that approach of building skills, and that does take time. It does take investment. We need to enable those individuals to build experience. We need them to be able to gain experience across different sectors that are allied to their core role, and not have them just be dominated by today's sort of operational delivery of that core role. That's really important. That takes time. That takes commitment from the top of the organization to make that happen. So that's super, super important. Just on boards, I suppose it's sort of it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but like, why should boards care about cyber? And I think part of the issue that we've had is we're not talking the same language as boards, as cyber professionals. Like, the board cares about the objectives of the organization, whatever that might be. It might be about maximizing shareholder value if you're a corporate, or it might be about delivering policy outcomes if you're a government organization. We need to understand that. We need to be able to resonate cybersecurity to those imperatives of those board members. We need the board members to be able to understand why cybersecurity is important to protect those priorities that they hold. They hold really dearly and really closely, and what can happen if cybersecurity is not in place. So I think that's one of the main things that we need to do, is be able to talk their right language and be able to relate cybersecurity to those priorities of the organisation. And one of the things that we've published from NCSC that's been quite successful is our board toolkit, our board cybersecurity toolkit. And that's got some really great resources in there that help people through that conversation with boards about why cybersecurity might be important to your organisation, why should you care about it, and helps provide some resources that people might find useful.
Thank you, Bernardo. I saw you nodding there, so go ahead.
Okay, so in my experience, I totally agree with that. We need a shift in the culture. So in the public administration, it is very difficult for the top management to learn about cybersecurity. And essentially, when we talk to cybersecurity, in my opinion, we should find the best trade-off between, for instance, the cost versus security, but also the usability versus security. So essentially, the matter it is how to increase the cybersecurity and to find which is the weakest link in the chain of security. So the idea is that we should see all the cybersecurity problem as a whole, and we should find to check all the different details together with the big picture. This is the really challenging part. On teaching and on raise the awareness to the board, essentially, you should speak the same language. So unfortunately, cybersecurity is a new topic. It started almost 50, 60 years ago. And this is the main problem, because also the language that we use, it is not the same. Often we need a glossary to understand different approaches in cybersecurity, and this is huge. So essentially, you should try to speak the same language of the member of the board. This is what I teach in my courses. Essentially, the idea it is that you should find which could be the consequences if you don't implement some cybersecurity measures. This could help in talking with the board. Also, another aspect, and in this case, we can learn from another area, the data protection, that in the European Union, we are pretty strict about the GDPR, but in this case, the accountability of essentially the corporation or the person responsible for the personal data is very important, because in this case it is mandatory to make a risk analysis and to find some security measure to mitigate the risk. This is not yet the case of cybersecurity, but in the European Union, we are creating the new directive, the NIS2 directive, in which we enhance this requirement also for the board. For the board members. And so the idea is that the regulatory framework, in particular some laws, can help in enhancing. If we take a comparison with 5 years ago, when we started the journey of data protection in Europe, now we have a much higher security measure to protect personal data. Probably we can learn something from this approach, and we can raise also the cybersecurity measure, not just for personal data, but for all the different infrastructure, the different organizations.
Thank you very much. There's something that Ian mentioned earlier, the skills problem. Obviously, it's vital that staff across a government organisation have a sort of basic level of skills to identify threats and head them off. But of course, people with skills will need to be recruited in as well, and recruitment generally is a challenge in a lot of sectors at the moment. So how big a challenge is recruiting people with the cyber skills government needs? How difficult is that at the moment, and how can that problem be mitigated? So Ian, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's hugely challenging. We're in really challenging competition with many sectors, as government that wants those skills, requires those skills, and there's a global shortage across all sectors. So demand is incredibly high for those kind of people, those kind of individuals, and as a government organisation, we just can't compete solely on salary, because we can't pay the same as for example financial institutions or big tech can. But as government, we do have a unique offer. We do have the ability for people that join government service in cybersecurity to work on the most interesting problems out there, I think. To work on things that actually matter to us as a nation, to really make a difference, and to be able to see what's going on, from some of those those threat perspectives to development of capabilities that we all rely on in be it in defence or critical national infrastructure or civil society. So I think the way that we can bring people in is by doing perhaps a slightly better job at really articulating what's that value proposition for the people to join. Even then, it's still a huge challenge. So I'll come back to what I was saying earlier, is that in concert with that, we need to think really long term about what are our own talent pipelines across government service for these skills, and how do we bring in talent, how do we bring in a much more diverse set of talent, and provide people with that career pathway and that framework to do really interesting work, to do work that really makes a difference and matters, and build that investment that way. So I think we need to do sort of both of those things together. Yeah, we'll probably still not have enough people, but that's the sort of things that we're thinking of.
Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we all know and we feel really every day the impacts of the sort of cyber talent shortage. Some of the numbers that we have here in the US indicate that there are approximately 700,000 open positions in the US alone for cybersecurity roles. I mean, that is a pretty staggering number. And we know very well that our federal government here in the US is similarly impacted by this challenge of identifying the right talent for the right roles and bringing people in an efficient way. I mean, at CISA, we are still a young agency. We are the youngest agency in the US federal government. And so also for us, we need to grow quickly to really meet the scale of the challenge. Our agency grew 33% last year, and we're on track to grow even more next year, right? So we're talking about needing to bring in thousands of employees each year to our agency. And that's really a significant hiring challenge for us. So just highlight a number of things that we're doing both for the government to try to improve our hiring, and then for the nation to try to make sure that we have a good talent pipeline into all of these roles, both in government and in roles in industry. So at CISA, one thing that we've done, which sort of dovetails with Ian's point about the challenge of hiring in government, especially when you're trying to compete with industry on salary. And so one of the things that we have done is create actually a separate hiring system for cybersecurity talent. So we, of course, in the US government have USA Jobs, which is really sort of the bane of many people in Washington, D.C.'s existence, but it is a way that we, sort of centralize hiring for the U.S. government. And that is really critical that, there be transparency about roles, and that platform is really valuable in many ways. However, one of the challenges we had was around the fact that for cybersecurity roles in particular, often just a resume scan is really not the best way to identify talent with the right role, with the right skill for the roles. So we needed a different sort of more skills-based approach to being able to identify the right folks. And so we have created what we call our cyber talent management system, or CTMS, which is more of a question-based application where there's more of a skills focus as opposed to purely sort of a resume focus, but really more talking about your knowledge of the field, talking about how your background applies, and giving us more flexibility to be able to try to identify the right talent for a given role. Additionally, the roles in that system in CTMS are eligible for typically a pay increase above our typical government pay bands. And so those roles are typically roles that are more technical in nature, which is why we need that more dynamic approach to doing the hiring. But they're also roles that then we want to be able to try as best we can to compete with industry on salary and to bring in that top talent. So for us, one of the ways that we've done this is really just trying to think about cyber roles as unique and then making a system that can reflect that sort of uniqueness of approach that we need to be able to bring in the top talent. So that's one item. Another thing we're doing is we know that there's to speak to that partnership again with industry. We know that there are many, many, many people in industry who work in cybersecurity that this is a mission-oriented field, right? Whether you're working in industry or you're working in government, you care about the mission, right? You care about security, you care about national security. And there are many people working in private industry who either have experience in government, who went from government to industry, or who are in industry and are patriotic and want to support our national security mission. So we also want to make opportunities for people to stay in industry and still bring their talents to the US government in sort of more time-bound or specialized ways. And so we've created something called the Cyber Innovation Fellows Initiative that allows us to bring on a short-term basis some individuals who are still presently employed in industry into government to help us with specialized projects and sort of bring that industry experience into government on a short-term basis. So those are two programs that we have spun up to try to bring in permanent long-term staff in creative ways, and then also to bring in experts on a short-term basis from industry. And then the final thing, I saw a question in chat as well that dovetails with this around what we're doing to get more curricula into schools so that we're really building that pipeline in the long run, so that hopefully, 5 years from now, we're not still talking about that 700,000 person, delta between the open roles and those able to fill them. And at CISA, we've partnered with something called cyber.org to provide a kindergarten through 12th grade, so really a full-scale education curriculum that really focuses on hands-on professional development for teachers so that they feel better equipped to be able to talk about cybersecurity, and then provides the materials for those teachers to be able to speak to educate their students on cybersecurity basics. I know that we've been able to get that curricula into the hands of over 18,000 teachers, which has impacted more than 3 million students here in the United States. So we know that there's still a tremendous amount more we need to be doing to bring cybersecurity education from the youngest ages all the way up through college. But that is somewhere that we're starting to try to make sure we're empowering teachers to feel confident to be able to speak to this sort of material and have curriculum they can reference.
Thanks very much. I think it's interesting what you're saying there about the sort of skills-based approach to recruitment rather than having too much of a focus on a resume or CV. I think that ties in with a wider push by President Biden in terms of recruitment across the federal public service. Also, you mentioned that we'd had a couple of questions in which you've answered on curriculum and early education in schools about cybersecurity, so that when students enter the workforce, they already have knowledge of cybersecurity, and perhaps in time that could impact recruitment as well. It may kind of raise awareness of a sector that they may decide they want to go into. Bernardo, I'm going to come to you on that question, because you mentioned, I think, the growth of the agency, 200 employees, and I think you said there are plans to hire 100 more. So how will you do that? We've got just about 4 or 5 minutes left of the webinar, so if we could get through this with you and Matt, that'd be great.
Okay, so essentially we started, so we raised from 0 to 300 in 2 years. So that's not easy at all. And essentially, so we started by finding talents among the public administration. So people that they were skilled in cybersecurity. This is almost a third of the employees in the agency. Also, we started with public examination, and essentially the government decided to put the highest salary in the public administration that are available in this kind of agency. So in these two things, it is not easy, because for sure we cannot compete with the salary in the private sector, but still it works pretty well. Also, the other things, it is that for us, but I think this is general, cybersecurity is not just the technical part in the meaning of computer science part, but also there is the part on policy development, because it is important to write the policy in a way that is possible to understand. Also, the communication of cybersecurity, so the way that we should communicate during an incident. And so the idea is that we have also the need of other job roles, not just from the technological part, but also from other domains, because the legal part and administrative part, it is for sure very important to cover and to have this kind of stuff. So this is our approach.
Thank you for explaining that, how it's going to work. So Matt, I think the last word will probably be with you on this question.
Okay, I tried to explain a Slovakian approach. We have one, how to say, crucial problem, because our universities started with education in cybersecurity 5 years ago. Before that, we didn't have exact cybersecurity education on universities. That or market or hiring market is very thin with cybersecurity professionals. But our approach is to make cybersecurity interesting. Last 2 years, we organized so-called cyber game. It's now worldwide exercise. People train and solve tasks through 10 weeks in multiple topics, like technical topics, non-technical topics. And it's a great field to find cybersecurity talents among students, among cybersecurity professionals, and non-cybersecurity people. For example, first cyber game won a guy with and this guy has not experience in cybersecurity. He was a programmer, a regular programmer, and it's great to see how cybersecurity in a funny form will introduce or will bring together a lot of interesting people, and we try to hire students and professionals from this game, and there is a big success. And there is more approaches, but we need to working on that. As I mentioned, our action plan of national cyber security strategy. There is a lot of tasks on Ministry of Education and universities to provide more programs, to provide more programs, not only universities, but in secondary, primary and secondary education. But it's quite failing, but we hope we can push this in next months and years forwards, and we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt, there for ending the Q&A section of this webinar. So we are out of time. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. So that's where I will bring this webinar to a close. I'm sure you'll agree that we've heard some fascinating insights. Thank you very much to our brilliant panel and to you in the audience for watching, and indeed for sending in your questions as well. You will be receiving a recording of the webinar in the next few days and a written report on the topics covered in the next few weeks. Before that, though, there is a survey that should be in your inbox now to get your thoughts on today's session. And it'd be really helpful for the team here at Global Government Forum if you could fill that out to make sure that we're providing the best possible content. Any ideas on topics that you'd like to see us cover in future webinars would also be welcome. You can see on the screen there, we have a whole host of webinars coming up. And one of them, called Following the Money, How Can Data and Technology Combine to Help Governments Beat Fraudsters, takes place on the 7th of November. If you'd like to see a full list of the webinars we have planned over the next few weeks and months, head over to the globalgovernmentforum.com homepage and click on the events tab and then webinars. So once again, thanks to everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you at another one of our webinars soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.